Hi, my name is Scarlett Jimenez, and today I'm going to present you my final project. So for this project, we are focusing on cutting onions because it is something that most people do on their daily lives, and also they are the base of flavor of many dishes. So the main purpose of our experiment was to find out the way to stop the lacrimal glands in the eyes from reacting to the gas in the gas the onions have. So we will be testing different kind of methods that we think that could stop or reduce the amount of tears that the person will be dropping while cutting onions. So our main research question was, what is the best way to stop the activation on the lacrimal glands from reacting while chopping onions? And our hypothesis was, if methods like chewing gum or a piece of bread can stop sulfoxide gas from being released from the onion and activating the lacrimal glands, then chopping onions won't make people cry. The main justification for our hypothesis was that when the gland is blocked, modified, or treated, then the tears won't come out. So that's why we decided that we wanted to test two different methods, chewing gum and chewing bread while cutting onions. The reason why we choose gum was because while chewing gum, it can stop the lacrimal glands from reacting by forcing the person to breathe from the mouth while chewing, decreasing the amount of gases that causes the tears and irritation to get to the eyes. And it is the same for the breath. So basically, while you chew something, it can reduce the amount of gas it enters to your body, making that you could react less to the gas, to the sulfuric gas. So after that, we decided to create a theoretical framework that has three main points: the lacrimal glands, enzymes, and the method of chopping. The lacrimal glands are in charge of releasing fluid which cleanses and protects the eye surface. At the same time, it lubricates and moistens. Also, these lacrimal glands had some optic nerves that activate by reflex. So when the lacrimal glands are triggered by a disease or by a reaction, which in this case is the gas the onion releases, it can cause inflammation and irritation, causing tears or other diseases. Also, the enzymes are very important in our project because we research and learn that the onions release propylenethyl oxide while cutting them. That this gas irritates the lacrimal glands. And the last point that is also very important is the methods of chopping. For example, cutting onions while chewing gum or bread, it is a method that doesn't affect the properties of the onion. Basically, you are cutting the onion like with their normal characteristics and all that stuff. And for example, the other methods that we find out were freezing the onion before cutting it and putting the onion in cold water before cutting it also. And we didn't like these methods because these two methods especially affected the properties of the onion, like changing the amount of gas or the amount of concentration the gas will have after cutting it. So after making all this research and all that stuff, we designed our experiment. So the experiment has the purpose to prove and test out different methods to stop the activation of the lacrimal glands while cutting onions. In this experiment, we will be asking 16 volunteers that will be cutting the onions with 3 different methods. The first one is without any alterations, then while chewing gum, and finally while keeping a piece of bread in their mouth. At the end, we will compare between the two groups and the best method will be chosen as a way to stop the lacrimal glands from activation while being exposed to the gas the onions release. And our variables were 3. The independent variable, that was the way the onion was cut. The dependent, that was the reaction from the lacrimal glands. And the control variable, that was the knife and the cutting board. The materials we used for this experiment were the onions, gum, bread, knife, and cutting board. So after making all this experiment, we had the results. And for obtaining these results, we decided that the person needed to cut 1/3 of onion per method. So every single person had the same amount, and that doesn't affect all the activation of the lacrimal glands. And we decided to measure that tears drop in milliliters. And here in the presentation, it is a graph showing like the results of each person depending on the method and all that stuff. So also we decided to create the ANOVA test because we thought that it was the more accurate to measure this experiment because we had 3 different groups with the same people trying the experiment. Also, we created the null hypothesis that was that it will be it will be no difference between the different kind of method the person used to cut the onions, and also the alternative hypothesis that was that it will be a significant difference on the method, on the amount of tears depending on the method the person used while cutting onions. And there are all the p-values of statistics and the ANOVA result. So after elaborating this experiment, we began creating the statistics. Also, as I mentioned it before, the ANOVA test, because the 3 different sample groups. And after finishing all the experiment, we do the calculations and all the stuff, and we had as a result that the F value was higher than the F crit, which means that we rejected the null hypothesis, having as a meaning that we will have a significant difference on the results depending on their sample group. That in other words means that we will have different amounts of tears depending on the method, which means that depending on the method the person will choose at the moment of cutting onions, it could have the possibility of crying more or less. But chopping onions with the methods we propose doesn't mean that the person will have the security of do not cry while chopping onions. And on conclusion, after making the entire experiment, we think that we could improve certain aspects. For example, to find a way to measure that tears drop in a comfortable way, because while making the experiment, we had some difficulties while measuring the drops. Because it was in a certain moments very uncomfortable to grab every single drop and do not hurt or incommode the person doing the experiment. Also, a future improvement of this experiment, we could add if the tears dropped also depend on the maturity of the onion. For example, if the onion is on the exact point of being chopped or it is almost passing out, could affect the amount of tears dropped after chopping it, because maybe the sulfuric acid can be more concentrated in an onion that it is almost passing out than in an onion that it is ready to chop. And here are my all the APA references, and thanks for watching.